what I know is that a lot of people have trouble reading.
Mm-hmm.
And with technology, the technology we have today, with electronic text, we can change that so that millions and millions, hundreds of millions of people can easily improve their reading.
Jonathan Hassell interviews Shawn Henry on text customization for readability. Today I'm here at CSUN with Shawn Henry, well-known accessibility evangelist and advocate, and the author of the great book Just Ask. When I was at the BBC and it was my job to bring together accessibility and usability, your book came out pretty much exactly at the same time, and so I felt like I had a friend already. So that was good. So I want to thank you for that, and it's great to have you with us today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me.
So I was interested in interviewing you today because of your research into text customization and readability. It was the TADA project. Can you say something about how that project actually came into being?
Yeah, it's really to fill a void. I was needing text customization in to be able to read.
Sure.
To be able to read websites, to be able to read PDF documents, to be able to read other electronic text. And for some situations it was really easy to make the text work. In some situations it wasn't.
Okay.
So, the text customization was just not available. There wasn't functionality in the products.
Sure.
So when I was able to actually get audience with product managers, I heard, well, we don't hear a lot of people saying they need this.
Right.
And the other thing was when I convinced some people, okay, or maybe some people just humored me and said, okay, what do we need to do? I found actually there wasn't a really good resource to point them to what was needed.
Sure.
So what I wanted to do is fill the holes. This started out a bit selfishly, I will admit. I was wanting to do something that I needed, and then once I started getting into it, realizing this was even bigger than I realized. The project was to gather stories and to gather experiences and gather information so that we could show the need for text customization. Another key aspect was to quantify it. What exactly is needed? I know what I need, and I know what some of the people I work with need, but what are broad needs? So
I've seen the great stuff that is there on the website that you created with this. So it's www.tader, so that's TADER.info.
Correct.
Yeah, they got it right.
Correct.
Good.
And it stands for Text Adaptability is Essential for Reading.
You had a number of verbatim comments on there from people, and for me, I would think that speaks volumes. I like enabling people to speak in their words to the people that they want to speak to. If you like, being that conduit. I love the fact that you have that on there on the site. People speaking in their terms about sometimes things that were maybe a little bit distressing. It's giving me headaches and nausea. Is that really the case?
That was one of the things that was surprising from the survey. The first thing that I did was just put user stories up. Because I knew those, I could get those done fast. So there's real user stories. These aren't personas, but they're real people. Then a lot of the quotes that I used today, 400 respondents to the survey, and one of the things that did surprise me was what happens if you try to read text that you can't customize. I was so surprised at the range of issues. Nausea, dizziness, severe pain, confusion, not inability to read. And so the message, the subtitle of the talk today was what you don't know can hurt you. If you provide content, if you're a web developer or PDF developer or whatever, if you provide electronic content and you provide it in a way that users can't customize it, you're forcing these reactions that people need to get the information. And that's hurting them.
It is.
And it's hurting you.
Absolutely.
Because you want people to have a good experience with your information.
I did a lot of focus groups when I was at the BBC, and when we launched relaunched one of the websites, we did a focus group to see what people thought about it. And I have this 70-second video of a guy who's dyslexic. And I showed it to people, I showed it yesterday, and everybody in the room was like feeling pain at the end of it. I mean, it wasn't even their product. You know, they were not responsible for this reaction in him. You know, the final line is, you know, I don't use your website because it saves on headache tablets. And you know, that's if you like, speaks to the two things you're talking about, that it's painful for the person. So therefore, they don't use your website, and if you care about the number of people using your website, it's painful for you. So you have 400 people who are there in the survey.
389.
Yeah. What sort of impairments do they have, and how many of them are there actually out there?
All the statistics are on the site.
Sure.
On Tater. There's an interesting statistic looking at the number of people with low vision compared to the number of people who are blind. And there's about over seven times more people with low vision that are blind.
Sure.
So, you know, we focus a lot on accessibility for people who are blind. And certainly in, you know, some areas like PDF from a long time ago, we needed to start there.
Yeah.
You know, because if you had a scanned document, you couldn't get anything.
Absolutely.
But in fact, there's many, many more people, 7.3 times as many people who have low vision.
Yeah.
When we're talking about dyslexia, there's some estimates that say about 15 to 20% of the population have symptoms of dyslexia.
It's a really interesting thing, and you know, it could be between 15 to 20% of people who are dyslexic. Therefore, there must be miles more disabled people than 20%.
Yeah.
But the statistics out there say it's only 20%. So, is there something about all of those people who have dyslexia that maybe they don't shout about it so much?
Yeah, that's a huge thing with, and a couple things. Number one, they don't shout about it. And number two is undiagnosed. You know, and whether we call it dyslexia or we call it learning disabilities and we call it where's the level of low vision, I don't care. You know, what I know is that a lot of people have trouble reading. And with technology, the technology we have today, and with electronic text, we can change that so that millions and millions, hundreds of millions of people can easily improve their reading. And when we're talking about young children, you know, all the way up through older adults. So older adults, you know, as we know, our vision changes, our cognitive processing changes as we get older, and this is going to be an even greater issue. You know, and what a huge difference it can make if somebody can read easily.
Coming back to where you started on the project, you know, people saying, I'm not quite sure if this is necessary, people don't complain about this. And what I'm hearing from you is that these people who have these kind of difficulties is a massive number of people.
It is a massive.
But they may be not extreme enough for them to send those sort of, you know, those complaints through. Maybe they're just kind of dealing with the fact that all of the time the world wasn't designed for the way they would prefer to do things.
I think a lot of it is that. I mean, there's a range of things. I think, you know, one of the issues is people who need more extreme magnification, for example. They've lived with extreme magnification that they can get by with, and they don't know any better. Literally, they don't know. Not everybody, because you know, one of the people whose stories was on the website. She talks about how much she hates screen magnification and how it doesn't work for her because of the scrolling and what it takes. So I think some users with more significant needs, they're used to dealing with poor solutions, and they don't even know to ask for more. Which is really sad. And then there's a lot of people who are aging. You know, we know that as we age, a lot of us, you know, don't want to admit it, don't want to ask for accommodations, don't realize, you know, when I showed my father how to increase the text size in his browser, he was thrilled. You know, but he didn't even know to ask for it.
Absolutely. One of the interesting things for me is how all of this plays into the standards, legal, almost kind of political dimension of accessibility. So because it feels like what we're talking about here is that we've we've taken the brilliant Workout 2.0 standards, and people have kind of said, okay, we just need to do AA, and then that's enough. And I'm guessing, I mean, does AA actually touch on any of the things that we're talking about?
That's a challenge that we're exploring. What's needed in the ideal world, the browsers, or the PDF readers, or the media players, those would provide the text customization that people need.
Sure.
Now the content also needs to work with that customization. There's things that the content needs to do, but in an ideal world, I think that the actual functionality would be provided by the browser, or the reader, or whatever. There was a little of that in the User Agent Guidelines 1.0. There's a lot more of that now in the drafted 2.0.
Yeah.
So that I spent a month on that.
And are people responding to that? Not being an American, I've had to kind of like understand all of the different sort of legislation and regulation, etc. But it feels like CVAA actually requires a lot of the sort of customizations that we're talking about. You know, video players that I've seen coming down from big sort of media organizations actually already have the capability in them for the user to say, I want this size of text in this color on that kind of background. The weird thing to me seems to be that the same organizations who put that on their website don't provide that for presumably the great amount of text that they have on their website, which isn't subtitles or captions in the media player. It's that kind of thing which is kind of like a disjoint between these kind of regulations and how people kind of do these sorts of things. What I'm hearing from you is a massive opportunity for companies. There are a huge number of people out there who are not getting a great experience of websites, and presumably if you gave them a better one, they would be more likely to use your product more, to be more, to be customers, all of these sorts of things. Yeah. If you're getting a headache and nausea from using a website, you're not going to be buying anything on that, are you?
Right. Yeah, it is a huge opportunity.
Yeah. So let's look at the things that people would need to have customized. So your research looked at lots of style sheets that people created for themselves. So this is somebody saying, okay, I have the capability to create a style sheet so that websites work my way. You came out with some really great stuff from that. Yeah. Things that and I've worked in this area for a long time, it's stuff that I didn't know.
The literature review and the RTF study and this user style sheet study, the purpose of that was to gather an initial list and to refine the list.
Yeah.
And then I used that for the basis of the survey. A lot of things we're familiar with. You mentioned color, the font size, the font face. One of the other things that scored pretty high that is not available in a lot of like just browser settings is leading, or the space between lines.
Sure.
That was a significant issue. And then we looked at things like line width. We looked at there's very specific things like capitalization, style, whether it's bold, italic, hyphenation. So there was a range of those kinds of things as well.
Sure.
What I find the most interesting is other aspects, like the ability for the user to not have to scroll either horizontally or vertically. So if you have text and you zoom it somehow, for example with common screen magnification software, a lot of times you can only see part of the line, you have to scroll to see more of the line, scroll to see more of the line, and what a huge issue that is. So being able to increase the text size and have it reflow or rewrap, so users don't have to scroll horizontally.
And I'm sure that most people should be able to relate with that, because nobody likes horizontal scroll.
Exactly.
It's a standard usability thing. Nielsen Norman Group came up with, that's like usability 101, don't make them scroll horizontally. And what you're saying is that as soon as you go into screen magnification,
you're
scrolling horizontally, unless, and I love this word, so reflow.
Reflow.
For those people who don't understand what reflow is, can you explain what it does?
Reflow or rewrap. let's see, so if I have a window with a line of text, I increase the text size. If it doesn't reflow, then the line length stays long, and there's a bunch here outside my window, so I have to scroll to see it.
Sure, absolutely.
Alright, so reflow or rewrap, either one, is the line breaks will change.
Sure.
Is one way to think about it. The line breaks will change, so now all the text stays within this window.
Sure.
So I don't have to scroll.
So you now have to scroll horizontally.
Yeah, it's all vertically, which is a lot easier to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
Speaking with vertical scrolling, a related issue is, let's say I have a 3-column document,
yeah.
and I've zoomed in. Even harder than horizontal scrolling is to get from the bottom of one column up to the top of another column, especially in a multi-page document.
Absolutely.
You know, so that movement is impossible for many people to be able to comprehend what they're reading.
Well, this isn't just the web here, is it? I mean, we're talking about anything that's in a PDF, anything that's on a book reader or something like this. That includes presumably a huge number of documents that people would need for work.
For research? I mean, the biggest issue I've come up with is research papers.
Sure.
You know, a lot of them are 3 columns, and some, you know, the tools will sometimes allow it to reflow into 1 column, but then there's significant limitations. The reflow doesn't let you search, and the reflow will break in some cases, and so the multi-column documents that you can't change is a significant barrier.
Yeah. And if you like, well, absolutely.
Especially if you're working on a research degree.
Yeah.
All your papers are that way.
Most people have to deal with a huge number of words every day. You know, whatever type of, you know, if they work in an office or whatever. And, you know, the documents coming across your desk. We're talking about a lot of people for whom the standard format of those documents is something they're putting up with, rather than something that's actually enabling them to make best use of how they process information to do a really good job, or even sort of enjoy reading a newspaper or whatever. So, I mean, this does feel incredibly important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we talked about people who are dyslexic. Were they the only group that had these kind of needs?
I think I had about roughly 2/3 were low vision, and roughly 1/3 was some kind of cognitive processing. So it could be people with dyslexia or other. I was also pleased in that it shows the age range. I think I had 14 people over 80 years old participate in the survey, you know, so a wide range of data. And I also, the survey had 2 parts. One part was for people with difficulties reading.
Sure.
So, and then the other part was for if you know about other people, so for like rehabilitation specialists, occupational therapists, accessibility specialists. So we gathered people's own experience as well as, well, I work with other people, so I know about, you know, a range of experiences.
Sure.
And that data is was included in this.
Yeah, I was one of the things that I saw that I thought was, as someone who does a lot of research, I thought it was just really good practice. You were coming at things from a number of different viewpoints. Does everyone need the same thing, or is it different? Yeah,
and that's became so apparent, actually even from the literature review, because what I found, I'm still talking to people who are researching the best color combination for people with dyslexia, and my answer is, it doesn't exist. You know,
completely agree.
It doesn't exist, right? If you're designing a book, if you're designing a flyer, if you're designing print, you want to know what's optimal. In the research, I found many things. I looked at research and guidelines for people with dyslexia, people with those low vision, people who are older, and I had a data collection spreadsheet on several aspects of text display, such as what's the letting recommendation, and the recommendations on that range from 1.25 to 2.
Okay,
that's
quite
very
a
different,
range.
right?
Yeah,
okay, so there's no single solution.
Sure.
In the style sheet study, I found some people preferred a serif font, and some people preferred a sans serif font.
Yeah.
So there's not one solution that's going to work for everybody.
And I mean, my research found that when it comes to colours, people with low vision and people who are dyslexic couldn't be further apart.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, some people had high contrast black on white, some people had high contrast yellow on black, some people had low contrast.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing with that, with customization, is that not only can you not make something that works for everybody, but there's some specific cases where, you know, if I can't customize what I need, what one user needs may conflict with best practice.
Yeah.
What one user needs may conflict with a designer's aesthetics.
Oh,
So, you know, one of the things multiple people commented about was the light gray text that's so trendy now, and they can't read it.
Yeah.
You know, and as you mentioned, one user's requirements may conflict with another.
Yeah.
You know.
And just a little anecdote, when we were creating BS 8878, we had a draft for public consultation. So it went out to literally anyone all over the globe could say whether they liked it. And we had comments from, I think, about 400 people all over the world. One of those comments was from an organisation called Neurodiversity International. I believe it's actually one of the first times that particular community on the autistic spectrum had actually engaged with the process of setting standards around accessibility. And you could kind of tell that because their opinions were just so unorthodox when it came to the rest of accessibility. They had done this amazing thing. They had worked out what colour combination would be able to be read best by most people in the world. So they kind of averaged out all of these kind of different things, and they come down to a light blue background and either a brown text on it or a 75% grey text. And I just remember looking at this and thinking, what they're really saying is they would like every web designer to be out of a job.
Yeah, it's not going to fly.
And so, you know, it's the reason why BS 8878 has actually got personalisation in there, because we looked at that and said, you know what, that was his number one point, was that every website in the world should be equal. So if you like, everyone should have an equally bad experience of it, as it were. His point number two was, if you didn't like that, you should be able to customise. And our viewpoint was, we love your point number two, because you've made your point. You know, how are we going to deal with this otherwise? But we don't think you can have your point number one, because that to us kind of feels lowest common denominator, and that doesn't feel like it's going to help anybody.
Sure.
That difference between people is huge.
What I need today for text may be different than what I need tomorrow, based on fatigue, based on medication, based on relapse, you know, whatever. So even an individual can change.
Yeah.
And that came up a lot in the survey too.
Sure.
People would talk about at the end of the day, when they're tired.
Yeah. So there are a lot of people with some pretty obvious needs once you've done the research. And yet, do you find solutions out there? Do you find that the people that you did the research with feel we have all of these needs, but we're absolutely fine because the world is supporting us, or were they frustrated?
Most people were frustrated. That one of the things comments I got a lot in the survey is, I didn't know I could do that. Now I'm going to go learn how to do that.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
So I think a lot of it is people don't even know to be frustrated. In the user style sheet survey, a lot of those I got several comments. Well, this is what I do. It works fine for me, but I know most people can't do that, because it takes a high degree of skill and knowledge to be able to even create your own style sheet to make the text work in a website how you want, you know, and to use it. So, you know, I think it was mostly, again, people weren't aware, you know, of even what is available.
Yeah, to me it seems it seems like we've got it all upside down a lot of the time in accessibility, so that we've concentrated on certain audiences who had real extreme needs, and so they shouted really loud, and so we said, okay, yeah, we'd love to do some great stuff for you. But if you look in terms of how many people we're helping, it's quite small. And your audience, from your research, is massive.
Yeah.
And yet, what I'm hearing from you is that if you have one of these needs, what organisations are actually saying is, you should learn CSS. You should become a geek so you can use our website. I don't think I can imagine the idea of that being good user experience for anybody. Why would you wouldn't do that for anyone else, would you?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
That's not good technology.
I think people just didn't know. I think there was just a real lack of awareness of how important it was. You know, it is.
Yeah.
So the people who are designing and developing, you know, we're getting older now, but we used to say the people in the web were, you know, the younger people, kids doing designing and developing that had good eyesight. And the thing with like screen reader access is there's strong organizations for people who are blind in several countries.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that created a voice for those needs.
Yeah.
And we don't have the same thing for the wide range of people who need text customization.
Yeah.
We don't have that single voice. You know, so part of what I am doing with the website, with the Tater project, is to provide a way to collect those voices.
Sure.
You know, and I've got some other ideas. This is just the start of my vision for this. You know, pun intended.
Yeah.
But you know, I've got an idea on different ways to harness this as a way to communicate the great need. The product development.
I think that's really, really helpful because, as I say, coming back to that was the point of your project.
Right.
Someone tried to call your bluff and say, really? These people exist? I think you found them, didn't you?
I just did,
So just again, for the people who maybe weren't paying attention the first time, the research is, and there's a lot of it there, and it's beautifully structured, and it's very easy to understand, but you can go deep into it as well. Give us the URL.
www.tader.info.
Finally, one last question. Is there one threat to people's ability to have a great experience of using, if it's textual documents or the web in general? Is there anything that you kind of, any directions that you see the web going in that you think, hold on a second, if we don't have those organisations who strongly advocate on the needs of this audience or this particular issue, we're in danger of excluding people?
Yeah, you know, interestingly, I think it's related to not necessarily a new thing, but something that continues to be an issue, and that is the difference between designers wanting control over the visual design and marketing, and you know, I want, whether it's a website or a PDF document, but the idea that I want it to look exactly like this. And design has gotten better.
Yeah.
You know, we've got responsive design, and there's a little more openness to that. But still, for people to continue to realize that what's important is that people can get the information, complete the task, do what they need to do. Your beautiful visual design is great for a starting point, but you need to let people break it, you know, if they need.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that this is forward thinking. Accessibility is still not ingrained from the beginning enough. We're talking about how when accessibility is included in the beginning, it can create innovation. It can make your product better for everybody.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, but how often do we still see the prototype comes out from organizations, no names here, who know better, you know, and they say, oh, we're just starting, we haven't thought about accessibility.
Yeah.
And so that, you know, until we can get accessibility involved early on, you know, that's still a threat. Products are still going to come out where accessibility is added on in the end, and it's not good for the organization, the product, or people.
It's the reason I'm doing the book. It's because you know, from my viewpoint, not only do I want accessibility from the beginning, but I want organisations to do that consistently for every single product that they're doing. And the idea of competence in this in the book is that you should be able to sort of like look at it. People in the organisation, different job roles, each one of them should know what they need to do to actually make a product that doesn't exclude what we're talking about, which is quite a large audience. Okay, so that's a threat. Is there some hope? Is there an opportunity? Is there something that you think this is actually going to help us?
I think, you know, when we can take the limitations of print, and now you've got your fancy little gadget. We need to make the user interface easy, but the technology is there. You know, so whether it's a book you're reading just on the train, whether it's important medical information, whether it's your taxes, whether it's teaching kids, you know, kids learning to read. I think there's a huge opportunity to make people's lives easier and to make access to information better by simply understanding and providing text customization that's needed.
Shawn Henry, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's been fun to talk with you.
You too.
This interview is one of 16 filmed to contribute to my book, including Your Missing 20% by embedding web and mobile accessibility. The book provides a full guide on how to transform your organisation to achieve the consistent creation of websites and mobile apps that are usable and accessible to all your customers at the most efficient cost. Find out more about the book by visiting hasselinclusion.com/book. Did you like this video? If so, why not share it with your friends? And I've got many more videos on their way with other accessibility experts from all over the world, so make sure you don't miss them by subscribing to my channel. Thanks so much for watching.